like to welcome the Right Honourable Stephen Harper to the stage with our board president, Lois Mitchell, to present the Royal Canadian Geographical Society's Gold Medal. The Royal Canadian Geographical Society awards its gold medal to the Right Honourable Stephen J. Harper in recognition of his distinguished career in public service, including his tenure as the 22nd Prime Minister of Canada. Mr. Harper emphasized the importance of Arctic sovereignty to Canada. His government oversaw the creation of Canada's first urban national park in the Rouge Valley, protected Sable Island as a national park reserve. He expanded Nahanni National Park and created a new national park in the Northwest Territories. He's also credited with strengthening the Canadian economy through prudent management during the global financial crisis in 2008, and his steady work and focus helped to expand Canada's trade networks globally. For his exemplary leadership, the RCGS is honored to award the Right Honourable Stephen J. Harper with its highest honour, the Gold Medal.
Thank you, that's wonderful. Let's get a picture. Straight ahead.
Everybody wants a picture.
Great.
So, thank you, Lois, and thank you, congratulations, Mr. Harper. You can take the seat in the center. Je vous invite maintenant à accueillir avec moi sur scène le très honorable Jean Chrétien, 20e Premier Ministre du Canada. Joining Mr. Chrétien will be John Geiger, the CEO of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, who will moderate a conversation. Between two former prime ministers about, what are they talking about? Canadian unity, identity, and how we protect a country we all love at a time of very complex geopolitics. This is going to be good. Enjoy.
Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you, honorables, for joining us today. 4 years ago, the historian J.L. Granatstein created a list of Canada's national interests. He argued few Canadians think about them and that the federal government scarcely ever bases policy on them. It was a very short list, so here they are. The first, Canada must protect its territory and the security of its people. Second, Canada must strive to maintain its unity. Third, Canada must protect and enhance its independence. Fourth, Canada must promote the economic growth of the nation to support the prosperity and welfare of its people. And fifth, Canada should work with like-minded nations for the protection and enhancement of freedom and democracy. I think it is probably fair to suggest that Canadians are thinking about those national interests more these days. We find ourselves at a moment that is unprecedented, I think, in our lifetimes, and for which many are concerned about the national interest. So thank you both for being here, and Mr. Chrétien, particularly thank you for your presence, which is an honor to Mr. Harper. I would like to begin with a question for both of you as two Canadians who have devoted your careers to strengthening Canada. You both had a strong interest in the Arctic. Mr. Chrétien, from your time as Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development, and later driving the creation of major national parks in the north. And Mr. Harper, you had an Arctic policy that included a focus on, from our standpoint, focus on searching for the lost ships of the Franklin expedition, but as part of a broader use it or lose it northern sovereignty strategy. Yet when you look at our history, including recent history, I think it's fair to say Canada has failed to adequately defend its national interest in the Arctic. So why was the Arctic important to both of you? I wonder if you could just elaborate on your interest.
First, I was a minister responsible for more than 6 years. Minister of Indian and Northern Affairs for more than 6 years. And I developed a great liking to go to the north. And I enjoyed very, very much. I went in all the places. And I knew about the history of the north because that land was not clearly in the hand of Canadians. And it is under the time of Louis Saint-Laurent that Gordon Robertson, who was a deputy minister of my department, started to move some Eskimo from northern Quebec to Grise Fjord to clearly establish the presence of the Canadian on the Ellesmere Island. And it is quite recent that it was challenged at that time by the Danish. And the move made by Mr. Saint Laurent led me to visit Grise Fjord. And I was the first minister to go there ever. And this week I received in my office the grandson of the mayor when I visited that in 1970, who had been the premier of Nunavut. So my connection with the North go far, and I'm happy that it's clearly Canadian. And now some people look at Canada and would like to take it over from us. But we stand on guard, don't worry.
Look, I just always had unlike Mr. Chrétien, I wasn't minister of everything at one point in time. But I had a long abiding interest in our history and geography, and especially our northern history. I'm always fascinated that the French and British actually fought naval battles in Hudson Bay. Like, it's unbelievable. So it's such a great part of Canada. So look, but my concerns were different. I think the reality is, in law, Canada took possession of those territories in 1870 and then 1880. But the reality is Canadian sovereign presence was extremely spotty, especially up until the 1950s. And even after that, we've kind of had periods of neglect. So, I believe that in the geopolitical circumstances I was taking office in, that there were long-run threats to the North were actually quite serious. I think I've been borne out in that regard. I didn't anticipate them being our southern neighbor. But nevertheless, we have to be able, my view, especially now, we have to be able to do surveillance and reach and ultimately defend all of our land, seas, and skies without the support of allies. And I think we're entering an era where with new technology, that's actually quite feasible for us to do. So it's turned out to be more timely than I thought.
Absolutely. I don't doubt for a minute that most Canadians have a deep loyalty to their country. You see outbursts of patriotism every now and then. Recently with the Four Nations Cup last year, just an enormous
That was
outpour.
the best, that Connor McDavid, that was the best moment of 2025.
Absolutely. Connor, hopefully we have
If only a
another...
prime minister could do something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have another Connor McDavid best moment in the next couple of weeks as Canada, of course, competes, Team Canada in the Olympics. But outside of sports, how do we reinvigorate a sense of Canadian patriotism, especially following years in which we were told that Canada is a country without a core identity, without a mainstream? How do we get Canadians excited about the country?
Well, let me just tackle that one quickly. Look, we are living in an age. The one thing, I travel around the world on business now, still do a bit of politics. The one thing about this world, whether we like it or not, we are living in an age of nationalism everywhere, revived nationalism. And there is no reason why this country should not be as nationalistic as anyone else. We have a lot to be proud of. It's a tremendous country. I think just about any person and almost anywhere in the world would love to be here, to have the circumstances of our country. Well, we have a great history. Obviously, we have a great land, a tremendous, gift of Providence. Great land, but we have a great history. And, there's been so much emphasis in the past, let's say decade, about all the things we've done wrong. Okay, fine. But look, all the things we've done wrong have been things that like the things we've done right, that we have built upon. We've corrected mistakes, and we've built, I think, quote Mr. Chrétien, the best country in the world. So, let's be proud. And our pride doesn't have to be just, not liking Donald Trump. We should be proud in who we are as a people and as a nation.
Mr. Chrétien, around the world, they look at us. There was an international survey a few months ago asking the people, if you had to start anew your life, where would you like to go? And around the globe, Canada came first. Yeah. And, it is the others who see us this way. One of the problems is we look back all the time, rather than look at the future that we can build together. Over the weekend, I wrote a book about this American who wanted to take Canada over in 1780, 76, at the time of the Revolution.
Right.
The guy who
Benedict Arnold.
No, he came.
Yeah.
But at that time, they wanted to take us over.
Yeah.
And you know what was Canada at that time? There was no Anglophone. We were a colony of England. And the Americans were afraid that they were going to use Canadians to fight them in alliance with the natives who tended to be with the Brits at that time. So if we, the Francophone, had decided to join the American Revolution, all you guys would have been obliged to go back to England because the loyalists could come to Canada. There was no Canada at that time, but the French Canadian that controlled the land. So if we were to look at what we've built together rather than what divides us, it is the problem. And be proud of what we can offer. When you're in the geographic business apparently, so I claim that when I was Minister of Indian and Northern Affairs, responsible for park, and when I was Prime Minister, I made more land aside for conservation and national park than the number of acres they have in France. And we did a bit of that too. We're the only country who can talk like that. And we have to be proud, we're political opponents, but we're not enemies, not today, anyway. And because he's afraid of the Shawnee and we can have, but we have lived something that is an example to the world. To have two official languages that, we have treated the natives better than the Americans. Not as well as we should have, but much better. We never sent the army to kill them. And we sent some missionaries who wanted to take them to heaven, and it was a controversy, apparently. But, and the French were here, and the Anglophone came, and we have now 50% of the population came from all the nations of the world. And they will never change, their citizenship for anything else. And it's why everybody would give everything they have to have the privilege to come and share our so-called miseries.
Jean talked about the defense of Canada by French Canadians during the American Revolution. Our organization, Government of Canada, RCGS, we spent a lot of time celebrating the fact that all these different groups of Canadians, French, English, Native, came together to fight in the War of 1812, which is a great moment in history. So we've created this country, created it through joint action, through joint defense, through joint economic building. But I would say that if I can, I got to get a dig in here. I would just say that the American Revolution, the War of 1812 are probably better examples of Canadian unity than the Plains of Abraham. So we'll just, we'll just mention that.
You may have a point. Well, and the incredible role, of course, that Indigenous...
But we cannot rewrite history.
No, we can't.
I was not there to wake up more calm when Wolfe came in the middle of the night. And the Brits tend to arrive in the middle of the night. They did that in the Falkland about 50 years ago. Yeah. So be aware, be awake.
Yeah. Perfidious Albion.
But you're right, and the Indigenous contribution to the War of 1812, which I think Canada would have been lost without the warriors who intervened.
We burned the White House, but we will not repeat it.
It's part of it's been torn down by the current incumbent.
Well, riffing off that, Mr. Harper, the last time you were on our stage,
Yeah.
you said that Canadian sovereignty must be preserved at any cost,
Yeah.
and that the country must be prepared to make any sacrifice necessary to ensure we remain an independent country. I'm wondering if that analysis still stands and would...
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, Jean, as obviously his history as a Canadien Français, my ancestors came to this country in 1774, 1 year before the American Revolution. My great-great-great-great-grandfather led militia efforts in New Brunswick during both the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812 to fight for the crown. So it goes, for someone like me, it goes back a long way. I think the countries, I love the United States, but I'm not an American. I think our country's different, worth preserving. I don't want to suggest that, we should go around kind of accepting unacceptable costs, but the fact of the matter is that the country's worth preserving, that I think there are costs that are going to have to be paid under the current circumstances to do that, but there's also enormous opportunities. It's not all cost. There's a lot we can do that we haven't done to make ourselves more competitive, more wealthy, more connected to the world, and this is an opportunity for us to take advantage of these circumstances. So let's do some nation building.
Mr. Chrétien?
I'm not discouraged at all. I think that we're living a very important times in the world. It's a big shift. It is probably what I would call the beginning of the end of the American empire. And it has to come. All the empires change. So now, it's accelerating. But we are in a very good position because we have the land, we have, the best educated people in the world. Do you know that? And we have the tolerance that is a great value. We are the sharing that does not exist in many other countries. We have less very, very rich people per capita, but less very, very poor people too in Canada. And we have the unity that we have to fight all the time about that. It's there and it will always be there. But we have managed quite well to survive, and at this moment, our friend from the South has created a mood that a Canadian have never been so proud to be Canadian. In my province of Quebec, it's still the same thing today. The desire to have a referendum is very low in Quebec. Don't know what the hell is going on in Alberta, But I have to go there. I have 500 cousins.
I didn't sign the petition, so.
Any Tories did?
I'm told
I
not.
want an answer.
I'm told not.
Anyway, we're having fun. Canada will remain united, don't worry.
Yeah. Well, I guess just on that point, you each have dealt during your tenure as Prime Minister with the stresses of...
Can I just say something about that? No, not on Alberta. I just want to tell you something about Quebec. It'd be interesting to see how the election unfolds there, but I recently ran into, it was actually the airport here in Ottawa. I won't name the name, but I ran into somebody who is a very, very prominent long-term separatist. And he was saying to me, we were chatting, what do you think? This is several months ago, Harper, about what President Trump's doing. And we chatted for a moment, and I ended by saying, I say, this is the reason why we have to stick together. And he lowered his voice and said to me, I think you're right.
Whoa.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
This very moment, we're at a moment we need to be strong and united. We are once again facing forces that would seek to pull us apart. And I guess based on your experiences, Mr. Chrétien, with Quebec sovereignty and Mr. Harper with Western alienation, how do you think Canada can strengthen national unity? What can we do at this moment, those of us who love the country, are deeply invested in the future of a united Canada, what can we do to address that sentiment in those places?
The problem is we don't know enough the history of Canada. I'm amazed by the ignorance of the people. when I referred to the fact that at the time of the American Revolution, we decided to stay in Canada. Why? It's because the king of the day guaranteed to the French the language and the Catholic religion. And the Pilgrims of Boston were mad at the British because he had made a deal like that. And they wanted to take over Canada. And I was reading a book this weekend, written by Madame Dohan. She's a journalist from Ottawa. It's called He Failed to Conquer. It's a great book about that period of time. And, we don't know that. That it is because of that we still speak French. And they say that we're miserable. My colleague said that. I said, it's terrible. We were 60,000 French Canadians in 1763, when by the Treaty of Paris we were ceded to the Brits. Miserable that we are, we went from 60,000 to 9 million. It's not that bad. And it's more people than in Belgium, in Switzerland, in Finland, in Sweden, in Norway, and in Norway.
Yeah, Canada is the second largest native francophone country in the world.
And Montréal, la deuxième plus grande ville française dans le monde entier.
C'est vrai. So,
Shawinigan, une ville unilingue d'où je viens.
Never been to Shawinigan. It's one of the few.
Shocking confession.
You're missing something there.
Well,
we have a beautiful museum there. Not true.
The Chrétien Museum.
Called Canada in the World. And that they talk about my career. They put. If my gifts are all displayed there. And there is a great section called Madame Aline. And about that.
Wonderful.
Locally. And it's all Canadian.
Well, I think my people might have said and whispered to me that I probably didn't have a chance of winning in Shawinigan. So, anyway, I was going to say, I don't want to get too much into the politics. I'll just say this, that, in our time in office, myself and colleagues here, Quebec, the support for Quebec sovereignty went to its lowest level since the early 1960s. And support for Western separatism vanished completely. So, look, there are people obviously in both parts of the country who think differently, but I think the reality is federal government manages this country right, puts the stress on unity and not on ideological tangents, and there's no reason why we can't pull the country together at this moment.
So the two of you clearly like and respect one another. I know you've got a bit of a roadshow you've embarked upon from time to time, and despite the fact that you represent very different social and political movements, what advice do you have for the current generation of political figures to enable them to disagree with one another without stoking polarization in the country?
The communication of today have changed. And the gossips of the taverns, you read them every morning on this little machine. And all that is terribly negative. Terribly negative. And I don't know how we will counter that. Because you have an article, and only the people who are negative. Very rarely you can read something under an article that refer to what is positive in the article. It's always what can be negative. And so that means that all the young people have that in their hands all the time, and looking at that stuff, a lot of time it was pure invention, lies, and nobody correct them. And that will have to be corrected, I don't know. But I lived the same situation in a way. When I was elected, Parliament, we had no TV, no radio, no nothing. It was a debating society. And there was a lot more, now it's on TV. So it's dull because, they read a text prepared by somebody else. The House of Commons in my time, you have not the time to have notes, the right to have notes. If you could not speak up your mind, you could not talk. And if you lie, my God, Trump will be in trouble. If you lied in the House of Commons and you could not prove, and if somebody accused you of lying, if he cannot prove it, he was expelled of the House of Commons. And now these things, these values of what is the truth seem to have disappeared. They all look with what attract attention, what is attractive for the media and the communication of today. And we'll have to overcome that. But we have overcome the arrival of radio, TV, the television in the house, and all that. So eventually we'll find a solution. Probably I will not be there to find it.
Look, I do think this is part of the challenge. We're entering a different age of communications, social media age. We've gone through, 175 years ago, or however long it was, 150 years ago, when Sir John A. Macdonald was going across the country, he was stumping. Like he originally not even a train, a horse and buggy, went from town to town, got in a park on a stump or a gazebo, and that's how he built a political campaign and built a political machine. And then we had the radio age, and we had the TV age, and we had the 24-hour news cycle, which happened in your time, and then social media was just really getting a hold, a momentum just near the end of my time. And it's changed everything because it's a whole new mode of communications, and it's a new challenge for a new generation to master that. And I agree. I think there's advantages, there's disadvantages. Look, I just think that somehow, the next generation has to be able to combine mastery of the new modes of communication with the kind of mature lessons of political leadership. And, I'd say one of those is, doesn't matter whether you're in government or opposition, you always need to be asking yourself, if it's a policy or in case of opposition, if it's a statement, not just is it popular today, but how's it going to look for you in a month or a year or in 5 years' time? You can't be drawn into the moment of the X tweet. You've got to think longer term, and there are times, and you got to pick your battles, right? Whether you're government or opposition, there are times like now where you have to decide we're not going to fight about that. We'll fight about something. You always need to be fighting about something because the public needs to be given choices. But on big things like Canadian sovereignty, you need to work together. There's times where the opposition needs to support the government, and the opposition needs to know that if it does that, the government is not going to exploit that to disadvantage the opposition. So there are times where you've got to use better judgment.
No, I guess you voted for the Clarity Act, don't you?
I did. I not only did, I put the first draft.
You talked to me about it.
I put the first draft of it in Parliament.
Oh, don't
but
take too
I
much
voted
credit.
for it.
Show a bit of humility. But on that, he was in the opposition.
Yeah, I supported
him. And he supported me, and there was some problem with that, probably for him, not for me, eventually. But it is something that nobody remembers. Now nobody talks about it. If you read it, it's not only a vote. The question has to be approved by Parliament of Canada. And if you want to separate, there is a series of steps that you have to follow that are very complicated. So don't think that because one night there will be a vote, there will be a vote to go. There's a lot of steps that have to be followed before this thing happens. And it is because we decided that at that time. Why? Because some people were claiming that with one vote we will lose Canada. Remember that? I remember, I said, that makes no sense. One of my friends in Chrétien would forget his glasses home, and I would not be a Canadian the day after, because he would have voted. And those who were telling that one vote was enough, I used to make the joke that, the NDP, I don't want to talk politics, it's a reality. Their name is an illegal name. They call themselves the New Democratic Party since 70 years. So it's not new at all. So it's false advertising. And they wanted to change their name one day at their annual meeting, and they failed. You know why? Because they didn't have 2/3 of the vote. So they were willing to let go the country for one vote and not get another name than an illegal name. They needed 2/3 of the vote. Just, relax. Canada is there for a long time.
Excellent. Thank you. So you're here today at Canada's Centre for Geography and Exploration, and soon the entire country will be witnessing an adventure of exploration at a level that no Canadian has ever previously achieved. The launch of Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen aboard Artemis II, a mission to orbit the moon. He will be the first non-American to reach the moon, and he will be one of 4 people to have been the furthest from Earth of any human being ever, and he's a Canadian. And so obviously this is on a scale, you talk about Bernier and Stephenson and some of the great explorers of Canada's history, but this is on a level that's completely beyond anything that they achieved. And in fact, it's more than a great achievement in Canadian history, but in world history. So Mr. Chrétien, you met John Glenn, and I just wonder if you have a message for Jeremy Hansen on the eve of this incredible moment.
But you're very impressed when you meet a person like that. Ooh. But it was something that was a great moment. When I was a younger politician at that time, and I thought it was a great day. But it had been slow on that course, and now we're starting again to look at that to see if we cannot make more progress. Of course, science has made a lot of progress in the last 50 years and will make a lot more. But that will change a lot of our habits in life. We discussed some of the progress we made that sometimes causes problem. But to go to the moon is still very extraordinary. And to have a Canadian on the moon, it will be a great day for us.
Mr. Harper.
Yeah, I can only agree. I think we were all, I think of the moment, Chris Hadfield's, time on the space station, and I think one of the greatest music videos of all time is Chris Hadfield's.
You say that as a musician?
Yeah, it's from outer space. So, power to him. Represent us. Just make sure that while you're up there, and I'm sure it's a joint mission that Trump hasn't taken the Canadian flag down and put up the U.S. flag. So make sure we got our flag there.
It's so far so good. looks great. So, Prime Ministers, you have developed a genuine friendship over the past decade, and I think I speak for many Canadians when I say that when you are on stage together, you give hope to the idea that we have a lot more in common than we disagree on. You show that there is a better way, and so thank you for your leadership of this great country, and thank you for your inspiring example today. So thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Congratulations.